Death is a funny thing. We fear it deep down, but when it comes in the form of a motorcycle, we're drawn in like moths to a flame. Maybe that says a lot about what we're like as riders. There's something attractive about a motorcycle so infamous, so powerful, and so dangerous that it demands total respect and bravery from anyone daring to ride it. The Kawasaki H1 500 Mach III was one of these bikes, and it was designed for one thing only: speed. This motorcycle was an experiment, a crazy dare that somehow made it out of the boardroom. Forget how it handled, forget how efficient it was. For the design of this deadly motorcycle, how fast it could go was the ultimate goal. Launched in 1969, it was the fastest motorcycle of the time. This beast could whip up to 126 miles per hour at top speed and 0 to 60 in 5 seconds flat, demanding a truly talented rider. It was aggressive, outrageous, and like so many things that fit those descriptions, short-lived. Earning itself the nickname Widowmaker, the H1 500 was as dangerous as it was fun, and in an era where fast was king, this motorcycle wore the crown. The story of Kawasaki starts in 1878. A tradesman by the name of Shozo Kawasaki founded a shipbuilding company in Tokyo. The company's success, spurred on by the demands of the Sino-Japanese and Russo-Japanese wars for battle-ready ships, meant it could expand beyond shipbuilding pretty quickly. Through the 1900s and up until the Second World War, the company's portfolio grew to be huge. They were making trains, airplanes, cars, and even submarines. By the time the Second World War came around, as you might expect, Kawasaki focused almost exclusively on military equipment, mostly fighter planes. Then, after the war, Japan's economy experienced a massive boom, one which was driving business, competition, and the country's international outlook. Kawasaki was able to go back to making all of its civilian vehicles, and it was at this time, during the 1960s, that Kawasaki finally turned its attention to motorcycles. In 1962, the company's aircraft division joined forces with the motorcycle manufacturer Meguro to make Kawasaki Meguro. The first motorcycle spawned by this partnership was the 125cc two-stroke B8. These B8s were actually branded as Kawasaki aircraft, and the single-cylinder engine featured piston ports and 11 horsepower. Then came the B8M in 1963, made for motocross events, and the A1 in 1967, a 250cc street bike which featured an air-cooled two-stroke parallel twin engine. Wanting to do more, though, Kawasaki started working on a top-secret plan. The company wanted to move beyond Japan and reach markets abroad, especially in the US, where the motorcycle craze was in full swing. Americans wanted bikes, they wanted horsepower, and they wanted them fast. At the time, Honda was big competition overseas, dominating the market with their CB450, a 45-horsepower 444cc bike, and Kawasaki knew it needed to do something crazy if they were ever going to catch up. So their secret plan, going by the name of N100, was created, and the goal was to go bigger. Kawasaki wanted to build a 500cc bike with at least 50 horsepower that could achieve the fastest quarter mile in just 13 seconds. This record was seen as the absolute limit that a road bike could achieve at the time. They also wanted the bike to be affordable, to make sure it could penetrate international markets and stand out from its competitors. Kawasaki didn't just hit these goals, they flat out destroyed them. What they created wasn't just any motorcycle either. It was the Kawasaki H1 500 Mach III, also known as the Widowmaker. Kawasaki threw it all out the window with this bike: handling, noise control, and efficiency. Pure, unadulterated speed was all that was required. The thing was loud and obnoxious, and most importantly, simple. These days, Kawasaki is known for its hooligan spirit, and it's in the Mach III that this spirit was born. The bike featured a two-stroke triple engine, something pretty new for motorcycles at the time, although it was based on German DKW triples found in cars, which gave them massive power at low RPMs. Kawasaki ignored the reed valves that other companies were using in their two-strokes too and went for a piston port design instead. The 3-cylinder engine came with 3 McCuney carbs and Kawasaki's car-style CDI ignition, which was new at the time, along with newly developed spark plugs that put a nice fat spark into the cylinders and gave the bike super easy kickstarts. So even though it wasn't that technical, Kawasaki had basically designed a bulletproof engine. The crank components were solid and the engine was perfectly in proportion to the bike. To be quite honest, the power and speed of the Mach III was unbeatable. There was no competition. It was way ahead of Honda and other rivals at the time. With a top speed of 110 miles per hour and 60 horsepower at 7,500 RPM, this beast of a bike easily broke the quarter-mile record. It's almost hard to believe, but just like that, Honda, which had been on top for so long, was put right in its place. The H1 500 was basically the most powerful motorcycle in the world at this time. It was super popular in the US too. People raved about its power-to-weight ratio, people raved about the speed, the attitude. But now, of course, we need to talk about the big ol' elephant in the room. It's all well and good discussing how immensely powerful this bike was, but immensely powerful doesn't mean safe. And there's a reason the bike earned the nickname the Widowmaker. The first problem here is that because Kawasaki was so desperate to get ahead of the competition like Honda in those days and create the fastest motorcycle there was, it kind of rushed the development of the Mach III. The suspension wasn't great and the body of the bike, if pushed to high speeds, couldn't really handle it. There was another issue with the power of the Mach III too. The engine overheated pretty quickly. It could reach about 500 degrees around the exhaust port. It was like riding a volcano ready to erupt. Other riders complained about the gearbox, which, with neutral below first, wasn't really all that intuitive, as well as the suspension. And what's more, the 2 drum brakes at the back of the bike were pretty poor quality for the time. To have brakes like these on the fastest motorcycle in the world, well, it wasn't that great. And then there were the wheelies. This bike had the power to launch inexperienced or unsuspecting riders into a wheelie at a moment's notice. This was all because the Mach III had a rear bias, along with a pretty poor quality thin tube chassis that meant the bike actually flexed when the speed was cranked up. The power this thing would give out basically was sent to the back of the bike at higher speeds, and then, well, you were doing a wheelie, whether you liked it or not. Of course, some younger riders loved this and could be seen pulling wheelies up and down the streets in the US on their new Mach IIIs. But for those not expecting it, well, bad news. The build quality and rear bias also meant the bike suffered from speed wobbles. You basically took your life in your hands when you turned a corner. Some riders even said that turning left was especially difficult, but to be honest, the handling in general was pretty wild. With such a focus on speed, Kawasaki overlooked the other things a motorcycle should do, like going any direction other than straight. The bike's low price tag of around $1,000 at the time didn't help either. Considering this was the most powerful motorcycle in the world at the time, that was pretty cheap. This made it super accessible and basically put it in the hands of people who were definitely not experienced enough to deal with its power. Because that's the thing with this bike, it wasn't for everyone. Because of its power, the Mach III needed an experienced rider who knew how to ride it sensibly. Inexperienced, and often younger riders that were attracted to the bike just for its speed weren't prepared. It's no wonder this bike started to be associated with death the world over. Things can go bad real quick in the wrong hands when it comes to high-performance motorcycles. The Mach III was a gigantic 2-stroke beast that pumped out power so low in the rev range that it could quickly become a death machine. It definitely demanded respect from all who dared to ride it. To be honest, the Mach III was somewhat of a one-trick pony. Speed was what it was built for, and the rest of the bike's features suffered a bit as a result. But of course, all publicity is good publicity, as they say, and the risks involved with this bike, which earned it the name of Widowmaker, only cemented its rockstar status. And with that, the Mach III was really popular, especially in the US. You have to remember that this was the time when muscle cars were all the rage, and people in America, especially young people, were diving at the chance to get a motorcycle they could show off with, win drag races with, and just have fun on. There were, of course, some more sensible and experienced riders who used the Mach III for touring and commuting and lived to tell the tale, mostly because they never hit the gas full throttle. The Kawasaki H1 500 Mach III was born at a time when safety definitely took a back seat. The 70s saw horsepower and velocity reach unprecedented heights, and the Mach III was at the forefront of this thrill-seeking revolution. This motorcycle was fearless. It was a trendsetter, and it was popular. Behind it was Kawasaki, a company that wasn't afraid of pushing boundaries, which totally embraced the art of risk-taking, setting it far apart from its way more cautious counterparts in the American and Japanese motorcycle industry. From then onwards, thanks to this beast of a bike, Kawasaki would earn a name for itself that riders today still associate with wild freedom, unbridled power, and addictive danger. It's a great cocktail.